Awesome. Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome. Thanks. I see some folks in the chat. How are we doing? Share with us in the chat. This is the final Friday before the submission for the world's largest hackathon. So we are, that time flew by. I mean, just crazy. We also just announced that Bolt will be free this weekend. So if you have, it's not too late to sign up for the hackathon. Also, you can still sign up. Tokens will be free. We're gonna be doing lots of giveaways this weekend. We're gonna be giving out some loot, some snacks, some really cool prizes. I think I saw some AirPods, maybe a MacBook Pro. I'm gonna share the tweet here. But yeah, so super exciting stuff. We also have a live stream after this, the Hackathon News Network. I'll be sharing the links in the chat. Right now, we're going to be talking about Expo and getting your mobile applications deployed. So you have your mobile app, you want to deploy it. How do you do it? Or what questions do you have? We're going to be talking with Keith. Keith is joining us. Keith is the Developer Success Manager at Expo. Welcoming you back, actually, because we've done a couple live streams with you.
Great to be back.
Thanks for joining us. And then Alex is joining us. Alex is our Chief of Staff. And I'm Kate. I'm on the marketing team here at Bolt. Yeah, if this is your first time, make sure to throw your questions in the chat. Also, this will be recorded and added to our YouTube page later. All right, let's get to it. Alex.
Awesome. Thanks, Kate. Yeah, super excited for this one. I know a lot of people are excited about building mobile applications. And the way to do that, if you're using Bolt, is with the Expo framework. And so awesome to have Keith here. He's going to walk us through what you need to know to actually take an idea that you've built in Expo and bring it to life, get it out there, published, and attracting users, which is very important because without being able to do that, you can't make any money. So I'd say this is going to be a really good live stream for those of you that are wanting to build for mobile and wanting to figure out everything you need to know to actually get some users on your app. So Keith, super excited to have you here, and I'll kick it over to you to get this thing started.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And it was kind of fun to kind of play along on the in the background here with the hackathon this month, and knowing I had this live stream to make sure I was building an app alongside everybody, so I had something ready to deploy today. And actually, if everything works right, we will technically be submitting my Android and iOS app to the Play and App Stores during this live stream. Will it get accepted? Who knows? But we will certainly try. So yeah, kind of setting the stage here. If assuming you've kind of been playing along with the hackathon this far, you might have gone ahead and created a mobile app in Bolt and been testing it in the Expo Go app. So having the whole thing up where you're scanning the QR code to your phone and running the app on your phone or in your browser. And so kind of at this point, I'm going to take you from, okay, I think I've got something good. I think I'm ready to send it from Bolt to the stores. So we'll walk you right through that. I have a checklist today. We'll have I have a link, a little bit.ly link we can probably get out there that you can actually just use my checklist. I'm finding after making this checklist, I'm going to use it a lot more because even though I think I've actually done possibly multiple thousand of App Store submissions, I forget at least one thing on this checklist every time. And it's not that it's hard. It's just you got to go in order and just do all the things. And there's a certain point where the computer will just tell you that you forgot something. But it's still very helpful to just have those things so I don't forget something that I should have done maybe 10 steps ago. So I benefited from this process, but
it sounds a little like, you learn how to drive and then you got to go to the DMV and actually fill out all these forms and check all these boxes before you can actually go and get your driver's license in a sense.
Yeah. Or do a very, I know it's different in every state, but for instance, I'm in Ohio and they had a very specific maneuverability test after the general driving test where it wasn't just like parallel parking. It was actually like you had to go out like this and then go back in like this and then back out the other way. And I never do that. Who does that?
Yeah. It is kind of funny how there are these pieces, even though we are living in 2025 and so much of what we do has gotten so easy and fluid and we have all these tools that are so easy to work with. If you're really trying to get serious and turn something into a business, and there are still these like arcane processes that you do need to navigate, which is kind of a good thing because, like you said, it's not hard. It's just kind of confusing and like has a lot of steps. But hey, that's a barrier to entry. So, you know, if you can figure it out, it's good for you.
And if you forget something or you do out of order, you slip it up, you can recover any of these things. You know, if you miss a step, you can recover it. It's not the BMV cast, but that weird little thing I was talking about. The first time I failed that, I fell right off of the concrete into the grass. And the next time, the first time I did it in an SUV, and the next time I brought a compact car. So so sometimes you just got to adjust a little bit and keep going. All right, so. Yeah, I guess. If you want to share me out here, I can set the stage and get us deploying. Awesome. So, this is my app that I was working on in Bolt. I call it Clicky Maps, and the whole premise is actually leading up to this day. We have a community-wide garage sale. Some people call them yard sales. It all depends on whether you put your junk in your garage or your junk in your yard, where you're just gather everything up in your house and you go sell it. And we have like dozens of locations on this map in my neighborhood. And so last year I tried making my own app without vibe coding. It didn't look very good, but this time I wanted to do it, make it look a lot nicer, and wanted Bolt to help me. So I just was making a thing where I'm going to have like events in this app. And the first event is this garage sale, and it'll give you a list of all the locations and you can check them off. So you'll know if you hit every sale, if you got all the deals in your weekend in the neighborhood. And it has like little tags if the sale's on Friday and Saturday or just on Saturday, and you can click on the items and it'll zoom right over them and you can check them off when you're done. And it works on mobile and web at this point. And that's actually a really key thing that we'll touch on multiple times is if you have been building a mobile app in Bolt and Expo, it's usually web compatible. So really you can deploy to iOS, Android, and web in a lot of cases. And that will help us out several times in the next short period of time. So anyway, I created this checklist here. I made it like a little thing on GitHub, just like the little like README. And my way I decided that was like most easy to use it is to copy it and stick it into a GitHub issue. I'm getting a little bit to something I really like about Bolt, which is the GitHub integration, which I think makes this process very convenient. So I made this little issue. Time to release my app, and I am going to check things off in here. And actually, I'm getting maybe a little bit ahead. I made this very tiny visual aid just to kind of set the stage of what we are doing today. Is we've been doing everything in the Bolt interface so far. Bolt to Expo Go, prompt to change. And we're going to do the last tiny bit of things we need to do. We're going to do a few more things inside of Bolt. And then we're going to download it one way or another, whether you just download it via the export, or my favorite way to download it is through the GitHub connection, because now I can go back and forth between my computer and Bolt and back to my computer again. And it's really convenient. And then finally, we're going to use those last steps that we use with the Expo command line, or specifically the Expo application services, or EAS as we call it, which is our layer of things that help build your app. So it's a format that's compatible with the Play Store and the App Store or the web. And then we're going to use those tools to deploy to the App Store, the Play Store, and to web. So with that stage set, I will dive into this little checklist here.
Actually got a quick question from chat that will surface right up here at the beginning. You mentioned the ability to deploy a single app across multiple platforms. This is an excellent question and a big benefit of building in this manner.
Yes. So you'll notice in Bolt, you'll have that connect to Supabase button, integrations. That's like a first class integration there of a database or a data layer. Yes, you can use, and you'll want to use the same data layer, because if you're building, we call it a universal app, an app that works on iOS, Android, and web. And if you're building that app where you can access it anyway, you're going to want your users to use the same data, log in with the same account, and use the same data. And one really cool thing about building in Expo and React Native for that matter, is that a lot of libraries are 100% or at least almost 100% compatible between your native app and your web app, because they're both JavaScript libraries. They're both packages that you install the exact same way. So if you install the Supabase, if you set up that Supabase integration in Bolt, and that Bolt is automatically installing the Supabase library in there, the interface, the way you interact with Supabase, is exactly the same for basically anything you're going to do in Bolt there. There's like a few edge cases where, for instance, you're going to deviate if you want to do, like, say, social login, like login via Google, login via Apple login. Those behave a little bit differently on web versus mobile, because in one case you're like going from a website to another little website and coming back to your website if you're on the web, and the other case you're actually like going to like a little web browser window inside your app and then coming back. So those things, you would have to do some different things, but once you're past login, you're back in the same database. One thing I really like to tell folks is like, start basic, like username, password, like the simplest login scheme, the one we've had since login even existed. They work exactly the same on web and mobile. So start with that. Get users logged in, build the data layer, build the thing that's special about your app. And then if you really want to go crazy with Google login, Facebook login, whatever, like go back and do that later. Like work on what's special. Like auth is great. Auth is important, but we all have to do auth. And that isn't really what makes your app special. It makes your app functional, but doesn't make it special. So focus on there. And then you'll also be in this happy path where everything is like 100% compatible, basically, between web and mobile. Oh, looks like you might be.
Yeah, totally agree with that, right? Like, get the minimum. I mean, there's a reason why people talk about minimum viable product. It's because it's incredibly hard to make products, and it's very important to get your product out there into the hands of some users and get some feedback. And it does not need to be perfect. It just needs to solve at least a few problems so that people start using it and start giving you feedback. So
absolutely. One of the most important features is shipping.
Yeah, 100%, and you can, worry about the polishing aspects as you go. But awesome. Okay, let's jump back in here.
Alrighty. So some of these like seem a little bit out of sequence, but the reason they're out of sequence is because it's easier to do them while you're still hanging out in Bolt. And then rather than to come back to them when you actually realize you need them. This is part of the reason why the checklist benefits me, is because I will go along, I'll be like, get my app to, TestFlight, ready for testing, download my, Android APK file or whatever. And then I'll be like, oh, shoot. Like an hour later, I didn't make the privacy policy. I didn't make the home page. I didn't make the splash screen. So I tried to organize these into some steps, these finishing touches to your code in Bolt. So these are things you can still do in the Bolt interface. So one of them right here is creating an icon and splash screen image. So if you pull your app out, you'll see like the little default Expo icon if you actually go to ship at the store, and they probably won't let you keep that. It also won't look very good. It's like a little like, graph thing. It very intentionally looks like something that indicates that like, it's under construction. Something's coming soon. So you remember to swap it out. So we have here, I put in a link here. We have this tutorial, and I'm not going to go through the whole tutorial, but I'm going to show you kind of what the idea of it is. We actually have a video in here. So if you've never done this before, when we're talking about icons and splash screen, we're basically talking about, we need to get like a little design that represents our app, and we need to get it into particular image file formats that iOS and Android both recognize. And they both, unfortunately, like have slightly different formats. But we've tried to make this easy for you because the video here will actually take you through a Figma template where you can have your design and you can put it into certain little holes, and then you can export the right image that you actually need for iOS and Android.
And I mean, especially now with how good AI image generation is, I mean, this is probably the easiest time in history to be able to make a really, really cool version of this design, and then just paste the PNG or whatever into the Figma, and then this automatically will export it in the right format for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm trying to get the little, I realized I hid the grid here. Did the grid come back? Oh, here we go. Here. So it starts out with just this grid here, and it's trying to show you where you stick the icon in. And you can, so one way or another, what you need to get here yourself is some kind of image that represents your app with a transparent background. And you could give ChatGPT a prompt, for instance, say, make me this image that has these things and describes this kind of app. I did a very simple, there's like a plugin inside of the Iconify plugin. There's a bunch of different plugins where you can grab like little objects out of Figma. So I grabbed one that happened to have like just a bunch of icons, and I found an icon. And I stuck it in there. And one really cool thing is I have some like nice icons that are actually like two-tone. So it isn't just like, well, here's just a plain old thing. And this is going a little bit back to when I actually was building the app. But one thing I like to do with prompt is, or with Bolt, is with my prompts, is because I have like built the app like the old fashioned way before. I think about some like things about like, here's how you like isolate this part of code versus this part of code. And what a little thing that paid like, that I did way back like weeks ago that paid like huge dividends when I went to go do these steps is I told it to put all of the like, in the general parlance, we call them like design tokens, but they just mean like different colors that are commonly used in your app, different spacings. Like, is this a small space, a small gutter, a big gutter, whatever. I said, put those in a separate file and always use these tokens when making the rest of the designs. And it picked the colors for me. It picks like some pretty good colors. And I ended up with this little, I won't spend too much time in the code here, but let me find this little file I gave. It was just styles.ts, and you can see like primary color.
So cool, because you can literally see, there's the app, like the green and the blue, and you see that right in the logo. It feels extremely cohesive.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, when I went to go grab this little icon, the Iconify library, it was two-tone. And I said, like, you can specify one color and another color. And I said, well, let me just grab the primary, and I'll grab, because that's the one that it shows like is the default color when you haven't, when you're just like selecting a thing on the map. And then the success one was the green color that shows when you actually check something off. So I have like the beginning and the end, the alpha and the omega embedded into my icon.
It's philosophically like very solid as well as looking good visually. So
yeah. So yeah, I just did that. I took a default icon, I added two colors, and then I expanded it so it fit this little grid. And then you hide the grid itself, and then you click on it, and it has the directions up here at the top, so you don't have to remember exactly what I'm doing here. But you can do this little export thing, and this will export whatever is in the square. And the square happens to be the exact right size for an iOS icon. So then I could go back into Bolt after I exported that, and I could add it into, get a little extra space here, into my assets, iOS light icon. And then I could reference it inside this app.json file. Is when you create your mobile app in Bolt, this will show up, and you will add a few things to this as you go about in the process. But it's basically just a thing that describes like all these other things outside the functionality of your app that go into like when you actually build it, like the icon, like the splash screen, like certain IDs that Android and iOS require. Like we'll refer commonly to a bundle identifier, which is just a unique piece of text that identifies each app individually on the App Store. So yeah, once I did that, I just put, oh, here is my icon. And then I did the same thing with Android. And the splash screen too, yeah.
What shows up after you click the icon as your app's loading on someone's phone, it's going to show that image while the app loads.
Right, yeah. And actually, this was one I worked. So we have separate spots here. I simplified a little bit because we support in this template the light icon, the dark icon, the tinted icon. I wasn't quite ready to go with like theming on my app because I just wanted to get it looking good in one theme, which is also another shortcut you can sometimes take. Is like, actually Bolt is really good at doing by default light and dark themes. And sometimes I tell it not to in some cases. Sometimes I build that in my prompt, not because I don't trust it, but because I don't trust myself to go back to the other theme. And I'm like, I'll do that later. Like, hang on. I appreciate the enthusiasm, Bolt, but I'll come back to this part. I promise. So in my case, all I had to export was the light one. And then I did the Android one on the other side. And you'll notice like, there's just like different ways that like Android like centers the icon. The reason actually why Android exports different files, and you'll often hear this term like called adaptive icon. And like if you ever use like a Google phone, like a Pixel, you'll see that the icon is a circle. If you use a Samsung phone, a Galaxy phone, you will notice the icon is a squircle. a square circle kind of thing. And the reason you can specify one icon file and it works in both cases. I think there might even be another one that does squares, like OnePlus phones could do something completely different. Who knows? Is because when you give it the icon, you give it a certain size of file and you say that all of the visual stuff is going to go within this like center spot, like the center 60% or something like that. And if I could find the little grid here, which I seem to be missing it. Here we go. Nope, that's not it. I promise it's here if you load it by default, but I won't have you watch. It has the same little grid though when you open up the file initially that iOS does, and it'll split the icon into here is just the middle part, and then give it a background color, and then that background color, in my case, is just white, but that's what fills in the circle or the squircle or the square or whatever, however the operating system decides to show it. So long story short, I guess I was going to two things. Number one, the template will take care of this like little nuance of like how Android works versus iOS works, and all you have to think about is exporting a file. Number two, some people told me not to do this, but it hasn't not worked for me yet. I found out that you can actually usually just export the Android icon and use it for the splash screen for both platforms, and it just usually looks pretty good. Like as long as the icon is exactly the same otherwise on both platforms. So that's actually all I did inside of my configuration. As I said, give it a white background color, reuse the same icon, and make sure it's a certain size. And this is actually, I think, the default. If you copy it out of the docs, it's the default size anyway. So I was like, oh, I only need 2 files. I'm done. But you can also just follow the template and just put the same icon in the splash screen. It has another box of the splash screen. You can just export that instead, and it's fine. So yeah, that was splash screens there. So let me go check off. Let me find my.
I'm guessing this is a requirement for getting your app published. You can't. They won't let you do it unless you tell them what the icon should be and a splash screen.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If you have. I mean, someone might just, because there is a human element where a human is reviewing at the end of the day. And I mean, maybe you said my app was a blueprinting app and it had that default icon in there. Maybe they'd be like, oh, maybe that's just how it's supposed to look. But I would generally assume that they've probably seen enough people forget something in a submission that they see a common frameworks placeholder icon that they would probably say, come back again. But that is like a good distinction there, because if you don't specify anything, it does use a placeholder. So you technically could submit your app without this step. It would just probably get rejected in a review. And then you go back and be like, oh, I forgot the icon. Let me go put it back. It's not a mistake you can't recover from by any means.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'll try to go through really quickly the other things I didn't bolt, because we'll definitely want to get to the stores here as soon as possible. But 2 other things. Because I know later, just from experience and from forgetting this experience, that both app stores are going to ask me to provide a privacy policy. And it's just like a bunch of like legal boilerplate, whatever, that says like, this is how we use your data or not use your data. In my case, I typically do like a lot of like apps that just use local data. Like in this case, I'm just doing like a little checklist that's inside of like the storage on your phone. For this particular event, because I'm not really sharing this one with anybody. But if you were having like a database app, you might want to explain that like, oh yeah, we protect your data by login, or we don't share this information with advertisers or something crazy like that. So you'll want to do this. And what's really cool is, number one, because your Expo app is by default also a web app, it could just be a page in your web app, because the store submission wants you to give it a URL. Some web page it can go to read the privacy policy. So I just make it a page inside of my app that just you don't normally see when you open the app itself, but you can still navigate to it because it has a URL. And I just say, hey, Bolt, make me a /privacy page. And then also because I was feeling like, it'd be kind of fun also just have like a main page that describes the app, like a little advertising page as well. I said, also make me an about page, because both app stores have an optional field to just give it like a home page for the app. So I said, I don't want to write all that. I want Bolt to do it for me. So I had like a simple prompt that was like, create a privacy route that contains a privacy policy for the app. Note that the app only uses local data and does not store or transmit your location. Also create an about route that matches the app's features and links to the privacy policy. And then it did it. And I had, if I go here to about, Actually pretty, I like how it did these little icons here. I was like really happy about this. I like how it, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but later you have to put in a description in the store listing. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to copy what I wrote here. This is really good copy. Thank you, Bolt.
Yeah.
It has like a little contact button for me too. So yeah, it has everything you need, all the basics there. And I could go make it prettier later. Or I could give it a more specific prompt, or maybe go make my own graphic and, combine the two. And then these privacy boilerplates are like, it's repeated a billion times in the internet. So it's no surprise that Bolt has a pretty easy time with a basic description of your app, making like a really good privacy policy. And frankly, it made a much better looking and easier to read privacy policy than a lot of like the traditional way you would do this if you didn't have like a team of lawyers behind you and you just doing something basic. Is there's a bunch of privacy policy generators, and they're just like, like almost like LegalZoom, but for like app privacy policies, where like you say like, what's the name of my app? What features do I use? And it generates you a bunch of legalese. And this looks way nicer than that. I mean, there's a purpose for all the legalese, but I mean, my app is also pretty basic, and I don't really expect it to like suggest, I'm sending all of your data to Antarctica or something crazy like that. So yeah, those are checked off right there. And then I've mentioned this feature already a few times, like before I'm leaving Bolt. Of course, you could do the export and you could download it to your hard drive and do the next steps that we're going to do with the Expo CLI on your computer. But I just love this GitHub integration here, where you can, if you already have a GitHub account, you can click this button and it will create a GitHub repository, a place to store and version your code. And then it will sync automatically between Bolt. And if you download the GitHub repository to your desktop, like I can change code on my desktop, it will show up right in Bolt. I can change code in Bolt, and then I can sync it on my desktop, and that stuff goes there. So I can actually have like a two-way conversation. So like, instead of having to go like, maybe go like copy and paste stuff later on when I want to go add features and have Bolt add the features for me, I can just load it back up again. It already has anything I did on my end, and we just continue going. I haven't had really any issues at all. It's worked perfectly. So hats off to y'all for building that. I really appreciate that feature. So we checked that off. I have like a little like appendix that I talk about some of the tools you might want to use, like when you're downloading this. Like you're going to see me in a moment use Visual Studio Code, just a code editor to edit these files. I'm a big fan of, if you do use the GitHub integration, using GitHub Desktop. It's just very easy. Like, seasoned developers will tell you that like, oh, well, it doesn't have this feature for source control, blah, blah, blah. And I'll tell you, I've been, doing development for 20 years, and it's still my favorite source control browser. It's just so easy. I don't want to think about the complexities there. I just want to think about, I have code, I need to save it, I need to push it to the cloud, I need to download it again, and it's great at that. All right. So I wasn't sure if we had any questions there, or if we wanted to go anything else there before we talk about app stores.
No question, no tactical. I mean, we got questions for like the Q&A period that we've queued up, but none.
All righty. We'll keep going.
Into this, yeah.
So this is this is the most painful part of mobile app deployments, is that we are like, these stores have their own specific regulations requirements. So if you want to actually deploy an app to one or both stores, you do need to sign up for an account, and they both have a fee associated. So it's the most painful because it's painful to your wallet, at least to some extent. So the most painful one, of course, is the Apple Developer Program, which is $99 a year. But if I've been deploying, my own apps for quite a while, and like once I got into it, I kind of couldn't stop. So to me, it's like a $99 a year that's well worth it, because I get to keep, putting my ideas into the world, and that's just a lot of fun to me, even if nobody downloads them.
And that answers this question. I don't know if it's Rachel Lambert. I don't think so, but it is a convenient overlap here with the name. Do we have to pay on our own to upload? Yes, that is the point here, is the app stores charge you money to use them. So yes.
Yeah.
But I think this is also actually a good opportunity to answer this other question, which is this is a hackathon related question. How do I submit a mobile app for consideration in the hackathon? And the answer to that is you got a few different ways. This question was also asked on Twitter here. Can I upload for Android? Can you upload an APK file for the submission? And yes, the answer is yes. There's really 2 to 3 different ways that you can submit your app for the hackathon. One is you can go through this process we're talking about here and succeed and have Apple or Android approve your app for submission into the App Store. And then you could just send the link to your live app in the App Store. The review takes time, etc. Like if you're planning to actually have real users use your app, then obviously you should kick this process off as soon as you're ready, because it's going to take a little while to go through. And if it goes through in time, great. Then you can submit that. It almost certainly won't, though, considering that today is the last real business day. Well, you could submit, I guess, on, I would not do this, but you could submit on the last day, which is Monday. But so this is more about like if you actually want to get users and get your app out there. So to answer the question, how do you submit for the hackathon? If it's an Android app, you can submit the .apk file. You can put it in a Google Drive, make it public, put the URL in your submission. And if it's iOS, you can put the, what's it called? Playwright or no, that's something else. TestFlight, the TestFlight URL for your app in your submission. Those are the 2 main ways that I think mobile apps will be submitted for the hackathon.
That's great that you guys accept those, because one little sidebar on the Google is the Play Store is if you are signing up for a Play Store account for the first time, it was about a year and a half ago, but as if you're doing it today, new apps on new accounts have to go through an internal testing period where you give it to like 12 of your friends, and they have to have it installed in their devices for a couple of weeks. So in a month hackathon, if you had to submit with a complete Play Store submission, even if you'll eventually get there, which I think a lot of folks will, you would have to have this 2-week waiting period, which would be just not make sense. And it's I assume in addition to an APK, probably like if you're thinking about like a TestFlight link, you could also probably do like a Google Play internal testing link too, which would kind of be the same thing, and it would just give folks access. It would basically treat the Bolt, evaluation team as one of your 12 testers, or however many of them are actually trying your app out. Which actually, hey, maybe that would get you to the store a little bit faster on the public store. But that's a great point, and I will call out the different ways to submit here actually as we're looking at the submissions themselves.
Absolutely. And then another question came up was, will Expo be paid? Which I assume means, do you have to pay for Expo? And that's where I would direct you towards hackathon.dev/builder-pack. And in the hackathon build pack, you can get a free month of Expo production so that you can build and ship your hackathon app to the App Store for free.
Nice.
Minus, the App Store fees, which you do have to pay to the App Store.
Right. And I will add, so the number, especially if you're doing it at this point, if you're embarking on the submission thing and want to say get it done before the end of the weekend, I definitely encourage you to use that free month. The primary thing that will get you in this process is access to our priority build queue, which means that your builds will go really fast. So we have a free plan, and the free plan gives you a certain number of iOS and Android builds per month. And they go into our regular queue. So there's, it depends on the time of day and how busy it is. But there might be a waiting time before it gets to start your build. But the priority queue usually kicks off in a minute or less. So definitely take advantage of that. I will say, though, everything I do show you, say you are, pursuing building an app with Bolt and then going to the store, after the hackathon as well, is that anything I do here actually can be done with a free account on its own too in the future. So if you miss that promotion, today or this month and want to come back to it later, because maybe you found this video and, 6 months later, just know that you could, I think I needed I needed a few extra builds because I messed some things up the first time, but you could do this process in 2 builds technically. And we give you 30 builds, up to 30 total builds and up to 15 iOS builds on the free plan in a month.
Awesome. And then we got a question here from Coco. I'm not sure how the Expo promo thing works. I assume that you need to redeem the Expo promo during the hackathon, but if you redeemed it like today, it would be good for 30 days from today.
Yeah, I'm not actually didn't check the exact expiration or logic in there, but I assume that's about the case because I know you're going in my head like how Stripe works or something like that, like how the checkout process. But yeah, if you redeemed a month, if you got a month access code and you redeemed it today, it would be good for like the when you sign up for a subscription plan, your billing period starts that moment you sign up, and then it's good for an entire month. So yeah, you would get a whole extra month.
But yeah, I would assume if your team set this up properly, you will not be able to redeem this offer on July 1st.
Yeah.
So you will need to redeem during the hackathon.
Note to self, double check that.
Yeah, exactly. We may have had a few little issues there recently, so I would actually go double check. It is not as easy as you would think to set up promo codes, which is exactly what you want. Let's see. And then let's see. Here's another question. Okay, let's see if I understand this. My app is almost done with the review and Android is still waiting. So I'm guessing this person has already submitted to the app stores. If I send a link to the app on iOS, I assume he means with the hackathon submission and it's a paid app. Where can I attach the promo code? I didn't see a field in the submission form. That is okay, right? Because the judges are gonna need a promo code to access your app. I would just put it in the description somewhere. Like there's a open text fields in your submission form. Just put in this is a promo code, and I would either make the promo code like unlimited uses or like 100 uses or so, because there's a good number of judges involved in, so may need to redeem that more than one time. Awesome. Okay. I think Keith, that's a good time to we've addressed the current questions.
Cool.
Let's hop back.
Perfect, because we're getting down to building and deploying to the stores. So I'll breeze by this one because I think most apps will not be in this boat. But I do have a link here where so the Expo Go app that you download to your phone has like a certain set of libraries built into it. So a certain set of capabilities, and those are the things that you can develop directly, going between Bolt and Expo Go. There are, and the hackathon rules are quite permissive and understanding of there might be some last mile work you need to do in like a text editor and your local computer. And in the case of a mobile app, those could be like certain libraries or features that you need to like do something else to your own app in order to make them work. You can't make them work in Expo Go, usually due to App Store regulations. So like an example might be like full configuration of push notifications. Or in my case, I actually was using a maps library, the Expo Maps library that's not available in Expo Go. So in my text editor, I actually went and added those, and I made a thing called a development build, which is just like, it's Expo Go, but it's like customized to your app. So I'll leave it at that level. But if you think you're in that boat, you can follow this link inside the checklist and you can take care of that part. It'll be add a whole 2 extra builds when you consider both platforms to your total use of builds. So it's also very doable in the free plan as well. But that's all I have to say about that. But moving on to deploying to iOS. The reason I picked iOS first is because we have this all-inclusive command that like does like everything. It basically takes you to the point where anything else you would do, like it would be it's more of like following the steps in the website. So we have this npx TestFlight command. So say you have downloaded your app, say you were using the GitHub integration, you download it through GitHub and you opened it up inside of your text editor. Ignore this, don't worry too much on all these, scary text files, and they're not important here. What's important here is what we're doing on the command line here, which is running one simple command, npx TestFlight. And this does a bunch of things at once. So it submits or it runs an iOS build of your app on Expo's servers, the Expo Application Services server. And it's a cloud app builder. So this means that you don't need a Mac to build an iOS app. And typically you would need that if you were doing it on your own, because Apple only ships those tools for Macs. But I run this from a Windows computer all the time. I've run these commands. It takes a little more hacking, but I've done this stuff from a Chromebook before. So this is this is the way to do it if you don't have access to a Mac, or even if you just, I actually have a Windows computer because I put the Mac down at the end of the day and I go work on Windows, and just to mix things up. So you run this, it'll build your iOS app.
And this is after you've downloaded the code base out of Bolt and put it in that folder called unzip.
Right. Yeah. So, and really actually, so you'll see these different files in here. Even though I did this already, like the EAS JSON file, which is like the configuration for Expo application services, this single command will actually generate those for you. It will handle the whole process. Like, I think it will tell you if you're not logged into Expo and to go create an account at expo.dev if you don't have one yet. But then after that, it will take care of pre-configuring your app to use Expo application services. And there's also another step in there. Like, there's a key you need to generate in Apple's App Store interface called App Store Connect. And it'll tell you to go do that. It'll give you a link to the directions to go generate that little key that gives Expo access to go submit your app to TestFlight after it's built. So it'll handle all that for you. So really, at that point forward, you just have to follow these steps and you will be at the position where you can now do everything else you need to do in App Store Connect.
Okay, so one question. Let's say you're my buddy Patrick Russell. You don't know how to use a computer. This terminal thing, how do you do you need to change folders or something from the terminal to how do you make sure you're in the right location when you run that command?
Yeah, let me see if I can actually reopen this from scratch. Now this will be a little let me do it this way. Okay, so
you're in cursor here, but you could do this just from the iOS terminal, right?
Yes, this is true. So my one thing I like about this, because you might want to add a few lines in here, is if you say you download this GitHub desktop, say you did that GitHub integration piece and it posted it to your GitHub command, then you could go add and then clone, and then it would search your repositories on github.com. Say this is your first one you ever did on GitHub, and it literally be the only one here. And then you could say clone it. And then this is going to download it to your desktop. And then there's actually a little right click in here that open in Visual Studio Code. And then it'll open it directly in this thing. And then this terminal guy, yes, you could open the macOS terminal, but I like to, if you've downloaded Visual Studio Code for the first time, it would look like this. I like to do this little terminal guy, just new terminal. And then it's right there.
Start in the folder where you downloaded the project.
Yes,
so
you won't have to CD anything. All you have to do is run literally the commands that are posted right there. One other little cool thing that it does is this is getting a little bit in the weeds, but if you're on Windows versus Mac OS, Windows technically has two different terminals depending on how you've set it up. And this will know that oh, your project is pointing to PowerShell, so I should just open it up in PowerShell. Or if you got a little geeky and decided to do Windows subsystem for Linux, it would automatically open in the right spot. So you wouldn't have to think about, oh shoot, I opened it in the wrong terminal. It would know what to do. So I'm a big fan of that. And once you do that once, it actually just always opens the terminal. So now I'm just in this place where I just always have code next to commands that I run on the code. Yeah, so you run this npx TestFlight. It's going to ask you to log into your Apple account. Now, for the security, aficionados around here, this logging in is happening only on your local computer. It's between your local computer and the Apple servers. And it's generating all the things that it needs to get from Apple in order to build your app. There's certificates and provisioning profiles, and don't need to remember the names of those. Those are just weird, complex things that Apple has created to make sure your app, it comes from who you say you are. So it's got a good purpose, but it's kind of confusing sometimes. Expo CLI, the EAS CLI handles all of that for you, or npx TestFlight handles all of that for you. So all you have to do is log into your Apple account and it'll generate those things. And then when it goes to build your app, it'll upload those final products. So it doesn't need to log on your behalf after that. So I do that. Fortunately, I already have a session. You'll have usually you'll just have one of these. You don't have to select several of these. But you'll see it just did a bunch of stuff. And you don't have to remember too much about this stuff, except these are things that you need to sign your app in order for it to get to the App Store. And you'll see here is it created a build, and then it also kicked off a submission. So it kind of it kind of has a build that already started running on the Expo servers, and you can see the progress in here if you click on the link. And then it also schedules a submission. So what it's saying here is like, once your build is done, we will send it to TestFlight for you automatically. And then like, so once, and it'll actually just kind of sit here. So if you, by default, if you just sit here and let this thing like do its little scrolly thing and then come back in 10 or 15 minutes, then you'll see that it's all done. And then that's the point where you can go check on TestFlight to see if your app is there.
And if you're submitting to the hackathon, that is as far as you are now done. You know, like you can submit that TestFlight URL and that, you know, end of story. So the rest of this process is about if you want to actually get it into the App Store so that other people can.
So, and I assume though, when you guys accept the submissions off of TestFlight, do you want them via the TestFlight public beta, or do you accept like say like have someone invite an email to it or something like that? So
ideally a public TestFlight link.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So you might end up doing one or two more things inside of this. Oh, and Apple loves to log you out. So give me a moment here. All right, find my password. There we go. Apple. Too many Apple accounts here.
And I'll answer another question here. I can't read Arabic characters, so sorry, I can't give a shot at pronouncing your name. But is it necessary to build a huge app to win in the competition? Well, size is not one of the criteria. Kate can drop the link into kind of what you should be thinking about from a judging perspective. So I would say by definition, I cannot tell you that building a huge app would increase your chances of winning, since that will not be factored in. What I will say is we have 120,000 people registered. So I would focus on building an app that solves a very interesting problem, that's very useful, and that's very well designed and creative. And if you kind of look through the rules and the judging criteria there, you will see kind of some hints and tips and tricks on what you should focus on. So yeah, that's my recommendation there. And then I see you just asked another question around Python. Python's not really supported by Bolt, and one of the hackathon rules is the app needs to be primarily created with Bolt. So I would not recommend that for the hackathon. However, question for Keith: how does Expo do with Python? I'm guessing not too well either, but correct me if I'm wrong.
So would this be Python on like the back end, like an API server built in Python that is like having the AI built into it? If that's the case, then it would work just fine, because it would just be exposing like here is like a web API.
The answer is, if you're a very sophisticated builder, what you can, and you want to do something with Python, you're going to need to run that on a server somewhere separate from your mobile app, and then reach out to it via an API service that you create. So theoretically possible. Would not recommend if this is your first attempt at building a mobile app.
Also, the list of things that wouldn't be recommended for the first time, but are also interesting, is there are an increasing number of local AI engines that are compatible with Expo apps. So if you want to do like on-device stuff, not have to run a server, the one is called. There was one at the App.js presentation. I'm blanking on the name. It has an interesting name. If I look up Software Mansion AI, what was this thing called? Executorch, React Native Executorch. This was presented at App.js. If you look up App.js 2025 and Executorch, there's also TensorFlow library. So basically, it's like two different versions of like AI engines that you can run on a device. So something that would not consume tokens with ChatGPT would also work when you're in a subway tunnel. So I'm really excited about the future of that, of like local AI and devices, because like we have these little like supercomputers in our pockets. We should put them to work.
Yep, more compute power than the first rocket ship that went to the moon. So
yes, absolutely. So Yeah, so the I was actually going to show real quick the part of TestFlight that would be relevant to getting that link. So that npx TestFlight command, when I mean that gets you to everything to the point where you can just kind of like follow the website after that, what I means is it actually makes this entry when you go to appstoreconnect.apple.com, it creates this your app, like the record of your app, and inside that there'll be TestFlight builds. So if I click on this thing, there's a bunch of stuff in here. Don't worry about all these things yet. But the part you would be concerned about to get like the public beta out is going to this TestFlight link. So by default, everything's always set up for internal testing. And one thing the npx TestFlight command does is it will send, say you created your Apple App Store account and it was just your user, your email address registered as the owner of it. Or even assume like maybe you decided to add a friend as a tester. Whatever emails are on the account, it will actually automatically send TestFlight invites to. It'll basically be an email with a code in it that you can then plug into the TestFlight app that you download from the App Store. And then you can test the app in what they call internal testing. So that like means you can go really fast to actually just testing on your own. Now that isn't quite where we get to with the Bolt submission, but it's kind of nice that it does those things automatically. When you're going to go to actually create that link for the TestFlight beta, first thing is, and I add this like a little checklist in here, is if you don't see something in here, so when you run that submission, it's the Expo servers are submitting it to an Apple API. They're like uploading the file, and then it'll say like the file will appear when it's done being processed. So oddly enough, that isn't the end of it. Apple actually takes a few minutes to process it on its own, and it will send you an email to let you know if that's successful or not. Taking it back kind of old school. So just to suffice that, usually it's pretty quick. Usually it's just like 5 minutes or less. But if you get here and you don't see this here, check your email. This actually happened to me while I was working on this app because I realized I had accidentally included the Expo camera library, and that meant that I needed to have camera permissions that I didn't have in my app. And so it just said, you're trying to use a camera and you didn't tell us how you're going to use it. And so then I went and took out the camera because the app had nothing to do with the camera. And then I submitted again and it worked just fine. So that's just my little tip of you. I actually forgot that was a thing because I just didn't expect that camera library to be there. And I actually, for how many times I'd done this, I spent like several minutes searching around before I remembered to just check my email. So I'm trying to save you all a few minutes there. Anyway, though, so the external testing, to get that link, under this TestFlight command or option, there's this external testing. And you can give it a little group of like people like Bolt test people. And this is like a mini app submission. So if you're going all the way, you're going to hear a lot about the app submission process where they're reviewing your app and making sure it's like functional and not violating any app store rules and stuff like that. This is like a mini submission where they just like a basic, like, I know this thing isn't malicious. I don't know actually what they check, but I know it's much faster and they don't check nearly as much. So I select my build here, the same build. And then I say like, this is a beta or thing, do a little better than me. Actually, so weirdly enough, I've actually never done this process before. I'm embarrassed to say. I've always done either internal or public store releases. Don't make me do it again. We don't need sign in. I click next. Test everything. And then you submit this. And then once this is done, this is usually, I think it's usually just like a very short review. This is then when you would get the link to actually that you could submit for the Bolt competition. And this is like much more convenient. Like while there technically could be a way that they could accept internal testing submissions, I imagine that'd be very complicated because you need to know like a particular person's email address. There's multiple judges for the Bolt competition. So then you need like everybody's email address, and that's not really going to work. So this is the way to do that. And this is not, while it isn't instant, it will not take very long. And as long as you put something reasonable in there. Now, I didn't put something reasonable in there just now. So don't just put like, it's an app that does stuff. Do a little better than I did, but that should go through just fine.
Yeah, I will say, if you just noticed that, you have to submit something and wait for other people, and it shouldn't take very long, but there's no phone number to call. There's no email. So if you're in the hackathon and you're thinking, oh, I have till Monday to submit. No, you do not. If you are trying to submit it as a TestFlight URL, Do this now. Like, do not wait until the last minute, or you are going to be very stressed and kicking yourself. So, of course, you can always go the Android app route, and that is probably more in your control. But just so you've now seen the process, so you got your next steps.
I'm paranoid enough. I probably wouldn't go to bed, even with a few extra days. I probably wouldn't go to bed until I knew I had that thing submitted. Sleep be damned. So yeah, that gets you to the testing phase, and really to the as far as the hackathons consider the submission phase with Apple. And we'll skip that part because that's about internal testing here. On the Android side, so you have a couple different actions. I'm going to actually skip to the easiest option, which is to create an APK, as we were just talking about. So in this case, we don't have this wrapper command, but there's also less things to wrap when it comes to Android, because you can ask for, it's almost like old fashioned like Windows, like give me an executable, download it from the internet and run it on my computer. In this case, it's create an APK file. An APK is an Android executable that you can then sideload, as we call it, onto your Android device. And your Android device will give you warnings about it's insecure code. But you made the app, you trust yourself. It's okay. You just click through the warnings and you're good. So to do this, going to our commands here, I would run EAS build, and you have these build profiles. So in this case, we'll use the profile preview. It's exactly the same as the production one that I mentioned in the checklist. The only difference is it generates this APK file, which you can sideload, rather than the AAB file, which is what you would actually submit to the Play Store in order to eventually distribute it publicly. And then you say platform, Android, and these aren't in magic strings. These map to these profiles that are in this EAS JSON file that gets generated automatically when you run that npx TestFlight command, or if you start using EAS build commands, it'll prompt you to generate those. But the default profiles have this preview in here, and that's the one difference. That's the only difference if you don't change anything else in here, is that preview is going to make an APK, production is going to make an AAB, use preview to sideload, use production to submit to the Play Store.
I think this is a perfect time to flash this perspective comment, by the way. Hey, I know we haven't in real life, but you've been at a lot of these live streams, so maybe we'll connect soon on Twitter or something. But yeah, there is a ton of information here. A couple things to note. This is going to be recorded and on our YouTube channel, and you can watch it back and pause and talk to ChatGPT or discussion mode in Bolt. Or Perplexity or Claude, whatever your, Gemini, whatever your flavor of choice is, AI model, and learn about each of the individual points and topics that are getting brought up at your own speed using this awesome resource. So, and that actually ties perfectly into this question. And I think that's a great question. And that's correct. I am not a developer. And yeah, the approach I take is just take it step by step. I mean, it's never been easier to figure this stuff out than it is today, largely due to LLM chat models. I mean, I literally would just go through things linearly. And if there's a word I don't know what it means, just ask the chat, ask one of the chat services, they'll explain it all to you. If it's too complicated, tell them to dumb it down. Tell them to give you more reading materials. Tell them to find you a YouTube video to watch about it. I mean, it's just essentially, I think the thing when you feel like you're drowning in new information, that's actually a good thing, because that means that you found a source of information that is feeding you literally everything that you need to understand to level up in the particular topic that you're learning about. And so it's just a matter of not getting overwhelmed, taking it step by step and learning what all the words mean to begin with. And then, just stacking the concepts on each other as they go. So that's my advice for a non-developer perspective on how to self-educate and learn how to use all of these new tools that are available to us.
Yeah, as I mentioned, as a developer who's done this a ton of times, I tend to forget things too, because there is a lot of steps, but that's why I made a checklist. That's why I want to share it with you all. And I am following it too, because I've actually been making checklists for as long as I've been submitting apps, because, when you do a lot of them for your day job, even you're like, oh man, I'm going to feel really behind if I miss a step. So let me just make a list, follow through it, take my time. And so, definitely encourage folks to use this. So that command I just ran to generate the Android build, it will give me a file to download. And whether I'm doing like the APK to just sideload it, like if I do that, I often, I download that link. It'll actually give me a link once this is done that I could just like send myself on my phone and then click it on my phone, and then I would download it and run my app. So it's as simple as that. If you are, starting to create the source submission at this point, this is the point where you'll go to the Google Play Store console, and it's just this like thing that has like a list of apps, and you really just start by like creating an app and then uploading the file that's generated from there. And that kind of kickstarts the whole process, where now you're going to be at this point where you're going to like, click through things, basically follow the directions inside there. But first, before we get back to that, I'll kind of try to, as I know, as we're probably wrapping it up here, like show you what it looks like in the store when you're almost to the state where you're ready to submit. But some of the things that you can get done ahead of time, just like those other assets we're talking about, was a list I wanted to highlight here, which is like screenshots. If you're going to do an actual App Store submission, you're going to have screenshots so your store listing looks good. There's a lot of cool tools for this. This one that I found just the other day, this app mockup.com. I really enjoyed this. It was completely free to use. You click the start designing button. I said, I want to do iOS and Android. I wasn't actually submitting for tablets. So I removed like the iPad from there and the whatever this is. And then I was able to like do these little like designs here. I was able to like set titles and stuff like that. One thing I did that was like a little like trick, because like I didn't want to take a screenshot on the same size phone, because Apple will say like you need to have a screenshot that's the same size as an iPhone 16 Pro Max. But it doesn't matter if it's actually the whole screen. You can have like this little like border around it. And I moved the phone down a little bit, so then I didn't actually have to make sure everything lined up, which is actually kind of like a cool effect you'll see in a lot of screenshots. So that was my little trick. And then I ended up with something that looked like this over here. And once again, those colors came back. I was like, oh, I'll do a little green here, a little blue here. Actually, I've meant to make them in the opposite order, so I'm glad I caught that there. So yeah, you just need, like in the case of Apple, you actually only technically need one screenshot. If you're not doing iPad, you just need this like one big iPhone screenshot. Google wants you to have 2 screenshots, and as long as they like basically match the dimensions of like any random Android phone, they pretty much work. So I really recommend leaning on a tool like that. That makes it just like a lot easier to do. So check. Store description, I mentioned earlier that I made that about page and I just copied it, but Bolt or ChatGPT AI tools, you can give it like a sentence. So this is what my app does. And then you can plug it in as the description in your actual app. So I'm kind of just going through and filling out this thing. This is the point where I mentioned, like, click through these things. Now that you have this entry up here, if you go to this add to review button and you forget something, it'll tell you what you're forgetting. I tried to summarize them in the checklist, but like it also is like something you don't need to like necessarily remember, because it'll be like, oh yeah, you need to give it like a privacy policy. You need to give it a category or something like that. And the couple more of the assets that I do mention in here is like Play Store wants like a different file size for the icon that it shows on the Play Store itself. So you just need to resize the icon you already generated earlier. It also wants this feature graphic that I'm not sure. I feel like it's like only certain devices show it, because I never see it when I open the store, but for some reason they still want this graphic. So I just like asked ChatGPT to like take my logo and generate this graphic that was this particular size. And I think it even like didn't quite do it the right size. So I just opened it up and like MS Paint and fixed it. So that was pretty easy. And then like a little short description, like a little pithy tag about what your app does. And so, yeah, once you're at that point, once you have all those things ahead of time, and once again, if you forgot them, it'll just prompt you for them. Then you can go back to this step, but I like to get them arranged for myself ahead of time. Now you can just go fill everything out. Like in the case of the App Store, I, kind of just went through these tabs. I had my basic app information, like what's the name of it. This is the point where if you like your name overlaps, Apple will tell you that you can't pick this name because somebody already picked this name. So you get to like figure that out. Give it a category. You can fill in this like privacy policy stuff. It seems intimidating, but most apps, basic apps, might only have like 1 or 2 pieces of data. Like mine was like, I use location. So I'm just going to say, I use location, but I don't have user accounts, so I don't actually link it to users. So just follow the prompts here. There's a part where, is it pricing and availability is an important one, where you just say like, my app is available usually in like every country in the world, and whatever you want to price it, if you wanted to price it up front, you would do that sort of thing. And then when you get back and you've finished filling all these things out, you actually get to say, I want to add it to review. No, did I make a new build? I'll just do the same one. I don't know why I made a new build. I'm kind of curious now. I know why I made a new build, because I ran npx TestFlight while demonstrating this. So this is where I would say if there was like any issues or anything I missed, and I would go back and fix those. But if it doesn't, I will just say submit to review. And now I am in, once it refreshes, now it says I'm in the queue. And this is the part where the Apple developers or Apple reviewers would actually like go look at my app, and, they're actually remarkably fast. They used to be slower, but a lot of times this process actually completes in less than a day now. So even though it sounds intimidating, if they do find something, like they say, like they want you to like, prompts for a permission you need differently or something like that, Apple especially is usually pretty clear about what they need. So even though that sounds scary, that's like someone's interrogating your app, they're usually taking a quick brush, looking for basic things, and they'll give you pretty clear feedback if you need to come back to it. But once again, you're at the point too where you should probably just do the TestFlight beta and get your app over to the Bolt contest team.
Absolutely.
So we checked all those out. Play Store is really about the same thing. The one thing I do like about the Play Store is, even though I feel like it jumps around a lot, one thing I do like about it is if I go into my app, it has this dashboard, and until I'm like have done everything, it just gives me this list and it crosses them out. So all I'm doing is I'm just clicking on each one of these as they come up, and then I come back to the screen and I see it crossed out. And actually, the reason I left one of these on here was so you could actually just see all those things crossed out. The one I always forget, because it's a little bit lower down, is to select the countries. This is the same step where you say make it available in every country and make it free if it's free. But yeah, I will actually be able to submit this app if I choose. Oh wait, no, it's not a government app. Why did I say yes? It's not a government app. I swear it's not a government app. And then it gives you like this little. Actually, I don't really like this. The publishing. Let's see. Oh, I know what I have to do still here. I have to actually promote it to production. So I follow those steps a little bit differently, where I use this internal testing thing, which you could probably consider pretty similar to the TestFlight beta links. And I can just say like promote my release to production. It's already picked the right one. If I wanted to add like release notes, like this is a new version, it's the first version, so I'm just not. Click next. No errors. We don't care about warnings. I mean, I've submitted it. Then I go to this overview, and now it can say, oh, I found an issue here. Oh, I have to complete a declaration. So if you miss a thing, it'll show you a thing. I do not use the advertising ID. That's a lot of mumbo jumbo. Basically, there's like an identifier that like ad targeters can use to target your app. And if you don't think you're using it, you're probably not using it. So don't worry about that. Go to overview. Now I can say send my changes or view. That sounds like a large number, but it's basically saying like your app is a change, your description is a change, your screenshots are a change. So just click yes, click through it. And there we go. We are submitted. It should say in my dashboard, I am in review now. So we are in review on the App Store and the Play Store. And cross my fingers, it'll pass. And if not, I'll just go and fix something.
Very nice. Awesome. That's cool. This is my first time seeing this as well. I haven't kind of seen the end-to-end process here. So this is incredible to have this checklist, which we'll be sharing. We've already shared the link a few times in chat. It'll be in the YouTube video recording on how to do this. We have gone 9 minutes over, but I love the chat too much. I just can't stop. So let's, we have been queuing up some questions that have come across the screen so far. So let's jump into some of those. This one just dropped from Coco. How do you think about converting, or is this even a good idea, or should you just not do this? Converting an existing React web app Maybe you already have mobile styles in there, but how do you think about moving that over to Expo? Like, do you recommend that for a non-developer or not?
There's a few different approaches. So if it's like a smaller web app, or even maybe you want to start on a few screens. So like with React, we like to say learn once, write everywhere. So in the case of like mobile React or a web React versus like React Native, mobile, it's like the very similar syntax, but like you might have to make some switches. So like say you have like a div on your React web page, it'll usually become a view. And one cool thing is once you do that conversion where you're basically converting over from like web specific components to these kind of like general placeholders, because Expo React Native, it's like a universal framework. Those actually compile back to web code in most cases when you actually choose to build for web. So when you make that conversion once, you're not just like converting over from web to mobile, but you're actually converting over from like web to like web and mobile together. So that's like one approach to do it. Is actually like to code convert file by file. There is one other thing. You can look this up in our docs.expo.dev. It's called DOM components, and it's a way to wrap React components inside of React Native. So you can actually, like a real common use case is like components that are kind of complex on mobile that are like really well established on web, like mapping libraries or rich text editors. And you can wrap it, put in a little wrapper, and then use it in line inside of your React Native code. So when you're thinking about an existing app, how this would apply to an existing app is you might like scaffold out your individual screens in React Native, and then you would use your React web code as a component inside that screen. So you could like wrap an entire screen from your web app and then reuse it in your mobile app using this technique.
So with all that being said, I have not personally tested this flow in Bolt. I would say if I was going to test it, what I would do is I would wind that back. I'd take notes on everything
yes.
that Keith just said, and I would put that into discussion mode. And then I would ask discussion mode to help me execute that process. And then after that, how would you actually like go and take that code? Like, would you then just like tell Bolt to like add like install Expo into your app, or would you need to like manually move the code over to an Expo starter app? Like, how would you go from?
I would do the second one. I would start with the starter app and I would move your web components one by one over. And so in that case, it's often, go ahead.
The only way you're going to be successful at this as a non-developer then is if you heavily leverage discussion mode to guide you through the process, because you can say, let's identify a list of the core visual components of my app. Okay, cool. Then tell discussion mode to do all that DOM wrapping stuff that Keith just said. It'll do it. Then ask it, which are the files that have those core components in them that are now ready. And then you would literally like download those files to your computer, drag and drop them into a blank like Expo starter project, explain to discussion mode again what you did, and then go from there.
Yeah. And at the end, like usually in most cases, what it's going to do is it's going to like wrap your web component inside this little wrapper, which then exposes it to React Native. So if it's starting to look like that, like, oh, I brought in my file that I already had done and it did this little thing, then you should be on the right track. Since we were talking about web real quick, I forgot one tiny thing on the deployment, which was like one of the easiest things to do, which is actually to deploy your app to web, which is literally like 2 commands. I put them right in the checklist. You just have to export it, npx expo export platform web. And then once you're done with that, you can actually run EAS deploy prod. And this will, with your Expo account that's already been set up through the other deployments, you get free web hosting, and you can actually deploy your app as a web app, and it'll show up right by default in an .expo.app domain. So here's my same app that I had on mobile that I just submitted to iOS and Android. And it also is on web at clickymaps.expo.app.
Wow. I actually didn't know about that. Fernando did know about that. I mean, this is also like a totally valid way to, to deploy. So I'm just thinking this through, and I'm like, I mean, I guess you could just do this and just submit this URL as well for the hackathon.
Yeah, I mean, there might be a possibility, like a lot of apps, you know, depending on sophisticated there, might have certain functionality that only works on mobile, like push notifications, for instance.
Camera, like also accessing the camera, like
yeah,
you mentioned.
This was a technique that like I did for, even if I wasn't distributing most of my app through web, that just the fact that the code is broadly compatible meant I could put my privacy policy inside the same project and run that command. And now I have that URL without having to go to another hosting service or do something completely different to finish the app submission process.
Yeah, and especially if you just want to like have your friends test it out and see kind of the general vibe and functionality of the app, that's a super fast. I mean, that's going to always be the easiest way to get something in a third party's hands to play with.
Yeah. And speaking of that question there, I mean, basically this checklist is if you skip almost everything after this part, it basically is, in terms of an Expo for web app, it is a web deployment checklist.
Yep,
so exactly. Just end here and you've deployed to web.
And if you're not running on mobile, then, you know, it's even easier. You just hit the deploy button in the upper, you know, right-hand corner.
Right. That's true too. Yeah.
And then let's see here. We got a good question here around the Play Store subscription.
Yes. So the Play Store subscription actually is only a one-time $25 fee. So you don't have to pay it again each year. And you can deploy, I'm not sure if there's like some like upper limit on how many apps you can have on one account. I'm not aware of one, but you can basically do, you know, to your app, your heart's content. I have 3 or 4 apps on mine right now, which is like a small, very small number. I've worked on accounts that I've had 20, 30, 40, 50 on them, maybe 60. So yeah, I think there's like a limit on the number of submissions per day. Like you can only do like 16 production submissions per day per account. So that's like the one limit on there. So that's a lot of work to do 16 production submissions in one day. So I don't think most people have a problem with that.
Yeah. Let's see here. What else do we have? Okay, we kind of already talked about this one. I mean, medium hard, I would say. We kind of walked through the process of what that would look like. Depends on how complicated your app is. You know, I would not, if this is your first time ever trying to build something with Bolt, I would not recommend that you go and try to convert a web app to an Expo app. I would start in Expo if this is your first time, because you just don't want to get stuck, and you want to take the path of least resistance.
Just conceptually doing each of those things individually, a web app and a mobile app, and then trying to mash the two together just feels like a good way to go.
Yeah, 100%. Let's see here. What else do we have? These are some hackathon questions. Yes, you can absolutely open source your submission. Totally cool to do that. Nahom asks, if you have a unique and patented app, does Bolt have the right to claim it as their own product? Absolutely not. You 100% are responsible for and own whatever you build with Bolt. We do not have any rights over what you build whatsoever. This question, I really don't actually understand this question, but it's not something that I've talked about, and I worked with DevPost very closely as we set up the rules for the hackathon. So I am not aware of anything about privacy notifications or anything about that in the rules whatsoever. I would, of course, encourage you to go review the rules yourself. World's largest hackathon.devpost.com/rules. Yeah, this is not a topic that I remember coming up at all.
And if you're asking mostly because I had referenced the privacy policy a few times, that is just a requirement. In this context, I was describing for submitting to the production app store. The App Store and Play Store require those, but that wasn't necessarily me trying to say like, you got to do this for your Bolt submission.
Yeah, makes sense. Let's see here. Question from Kat. I am not an expert on this. Keith, this may be a little bit outside of your area as well. This is really a Revenue Cat question, but I'm not sure. Does Revenue Cat not the function in like a Playwright or a test deployment?
So it will not function in Expo Go, and that is because Expo Go can't include the native code that's required for in-app purchases in an app that's not using in-app purchases. Like you think about like in-app purchases are tied to like one app in the store, and Expo Go is kind of like this container for everybody's apps. So if it were to actually, from Apple or Google's perspective, support in-app purchases, it would actually show everybody's products of everybody who ever used the app. Which wouldn't pass review even if it was possible. So that's why that refers back to that step where I was talking about if there are like last mile things you need to do that you can't code between Bolt and Expo Go, and using that development build, which is a way to have that Expo Go type experience, but you can include things that are specific to your app that you couldn't normally have in the pre-built Expo Go. That's where you would look into that in order to start integrating Revenue Cat. As far as I know, that should be just fine to test Revenue Cat, and then your actual store submission. The public beta should be sufficient for that, because you can there's like I don't know if it's the right word for it, but it's like a test or staging type store. Like you can kind of like simulate the purchase of the products before you actually go live on the store.
We also ran a whole live stream with the Revenue Cat team, so you can find that on our YouTube channel, the Bolt.new YouTube channel. So I'd go watch that for sure if you're planning on putting Revenue Cat in there. Rami asked, deploying to Apple Store is more difficult, right? Yeah, they're a little pickier, right? I
would debate it more recently, because of Google has that new requirement for the first time you're going through there to do like the 2 weeks and the 12 testers. So when you talk about a production, if you're talking about the beta, getting it to the contest, yes, doing like the App Store, the TestFlight beta is more steps than submitting an APK to Bolt. But when you talk about actually going to production, I would say sometimes Google reviews take a little bit longer than App Store reviews, and sometimes their advice isn't quite as clear to me. So I think it's like some things are trickier and some things are easier on each side.
Yeah, interesting. Jace on Twitter, this was asked like a long time ago, so I don't know if Jace is still here, but you don't have free tokens because the free weekend hasn't started yet. Go check out our Twitter. All the details are there. Bolt.new on X. And then we got some motivation here from BLVNK. It's only hard if you make it hard. Act as if you already figured it out and enjoy the process. Apply that to every single thing in your life. I don't disagree. That's a good point.
That's got me thus far, is to act like I've already figured it out and enjoy it.
And then does a development build require a paid account on Google or Apple?
Generally, yes. If you want to test on devices for Apple, does not require it for Google. You do not have to pay Google anything until you actually want to go live on the Play Store itself. If you want to build to a device, that's the point at which you have to pay Apple. But you can do a number of these things if you have a Mac. Xcode is a free download, and included with Xcode is the simulators. So if you do nothing but that, you can actually make simulator builds, which have their own little special flag in that EAS configuration. You can make those without a paid account.
Awesome. And I don't know what this means, but I'm guessing you do.
So they're two different things. Expo Orbit would be, so Expo Go is like you just already have it on your phone. All you have to do is scan a QR code inside a Bolt, and you're running your code on your phone. Expo Orbit is a little like system tray tool for like once you start using EAS build to make your own builds, whether those are like, APKs you're side loading or development builds because you're using an advanced feature like Revenue Cat. And it just makes it a little bit easier to install those things to your devices or emulators or simulators. What'll happen is when you make like a build, an EAS build, and you have Orbit installed, which is just this little like, executable you install, it'll have a button in EAS build that says open with Orbit. And then you click that button and it will automatically open that build, say on your iOS simulator, or if you have an Android device plugged in via USB on that Android device. So they're two different purposes. If you are moving to your own builds from Expo Go, then you can take advantage of Orbit to save yourself a few steps in that whole test cycle.
Cool. Rami asked a follow-up question. So this really is about hackathon submission. So you'll want to go to our YouTube channel, just roll back this recording, which will be live on YouTube in a couple minutes. And we talk through this video will teach you exactly what you need to do the submission. And the TLDR is you do not need to get it all the way into the App Store. So and all the exact steps were covered in this video. And then let's see. This is a question. Will we run more competitions in the future? Well, most likely, yes. We haven't planned. We don't have anything exactly planned, but I mean, this world's largest hackathon thing has been super fun. And I'm sure that there will be more opportunities to use these skills to compete in competitions in the future. Don't have anything exactly planned yet, but stay tuned to Expo's Twitter and the Bolt.new Twitter. And I'm sure, that you will find some more opportunities to put these skills to work. Is there going to be an in-person wrap party? Yes, there's going to be many, many in-person wrap parties all around the world. Kate will share the link here in chat to go find the nearest one. They're going to be on July 26th, right? July 26th, we're having the awards live stream, and there's going to be watch parties all around the world. If there isn't one in your town, you can run one. Just go to this link right here. And if you have the ability to throw a YouTube live stream up on a screen and invite some people to hang out, or find some location to do that, whether it's at a local library, a local bar, local restaurant, community event center, you just need internet and a screen, and you can throw the YouTube video up and you can host the event. If someone is not already doing it, you can apply to be a host there, and the team over at River will guide you through that whole process. So highly recommend that you do that. And Nicholas says, do you guys understand what you did? You increased the dev world by 2x at least. I would agree. There's only 25 million professional developers in the entire world, and there's 8 billion people. So I'm hoping that what we're doing here is increasing it by much more than 2x. And yeah, it's really, really cool to just watch everybody learning these skills and building cool stuff who previously would not have been able to. Here's a great question.
How can we connect to Keith? Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at Llama Lover, LLAMALUVR. Long story how I got that screen name. I'll go into that later some other time. I'm also at Keith.bluesky or BSKY.social. Keith, just look up Keith on Blue Sky. I'm the first Keith. And let's see. Go to Expo. If you check out, if you just go to expo.dev in our about page, we actually have all of our socials of the Expo team on there as well. So you can connect to me on GitHub, on LinkedIn, on Blue Sky, et cetera, et cetera. And oh my gosh, I forgot to mention our Discord, the Expo Discord, chat.expo.dev. At least twice a month, I run office hours at 12 p.m. Pacific time. So I try to post those at the beginning of each month as events on Discord. So you can come and live on a Discord stage, try to stump me with your Expo React Native or other related, or maybe even not related questions.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we ran 28 minutes over. Don't say that we don't love the live chat.
It breezed by for me. I didn't even notice.
Very, very awesome having you on, Keith. I'm sure this resource right here is going to be passed around a lot in the future when people ask, but it's so hard. I don't know how to get a Expo app live with Bolt. Well, can't say that anymore. You got the step-by-step guide right here in this video. Recording will be on YouTube. All the relevant links will be in the YouTube description. Yeah, Keith, thanks for coming on. And anything you'd like to leave the people with before we shut this thing down?
Yeah, it was great being on here. Thanks so much for having me. It was a blast. I love sharing. I love empowering developers, more folks to deploy to the App Store, because while there's a lot to learn, there's a lot of good guides to go through, like this video now, and it's a really fulfilling experience. There's nothing quite like having your own app in the App Store, or having your own app on your phone even. It's just something magical. Every time I click an icon of one of my own apps, even though I've been doing this for like at least a decade, I'm still like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's my app on my small screen, on the screen that's with me all the time in my pocket. So it never gets less exciting. So happy y'all are diving in there and trying it out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And like I said, stay tuned on X for this weekend, the final push. We will be doing some giveaways, helping you get across the finish line. And I'm jumping to our next live stream actually in a few minutes. We're doing the Hackathon News Network. So if you're on YouTube, stay on YouTube, and we'll be doing some more announcements there. Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.